And we're live. All right, guys, welcome to today's coaching call. It is August 2nd, 2022. And we are going to be talking about numbers shortly, not for the entire coaching call, but I wanted to talk about the numbers that I think are the most important. These are just my opinion. But after running my gym for a period of time, I realized I kept coming back to looking at the same numbers to gauge how successful we were, right? And so I'll share those numbers with you. And these are the numbers that also allowed me to, when I improved them, the business got much better. And when these numbers were doing bad, the business was struggling, right? And so to me, they're directly correlated. Maybe not, but I think they are, right? And then I got a couple honorable mentions, right? Numbers that are important, but I won't say, hey, you can't be successful if you don't know these, right? And so let's get started, guys. The first number I wanted to talk about is the cost of acquisition, right? So this number is really important to know. Essentially, it is how much does it cost you to acquire a new customer, right? And if you don't know this number, it makes it really hard to market, right? And it makes it really hard to turn a profit on new customers that you're acquiring, because you don't really know what you should be selling your services for, or you don't know if you should improve that number, or you don't really know if, you know, how long somebody's staying, like if they're actually profitable. So the first number that I think is really important when it comes to acquiring, or when it comes to growing your business, is how much does it cost you to grow that business, right? Usually it's not going to be free. Usually you're going to have to pay for some kind of advertising at some point, right? We try to subsidize it as much as we can with organic pipelines, but usually there's some kind of paid component, even if it's just sales commission, right? And so here's how you find that number. It'll be referenced as CAC, cost to acquire a customer, across all businesses, right? And what you do is you take the total amount of members that you signed up in any given period, usually a month, right? And then you divide it by how much it costs you when it comes to sales and advertising, right? So if you're running Facebook ads, if you're advertising and giving money in some other way to generate leads, right? And then your sales pipeline, do you have to pay sales commission on things that get sold? Is there a base salary that your salesperson is making? Do you have anybody hitting the phones, like a setter, or even just your front desk that's calling, and you can associate some of their pay with the cost of acquisition, right? You really want to say like, okay, or when it comes to softwares that you're using that are direct, only used for acquisition and nothing else, right? If it's blended, if it's like, oh, this software does this, like I don't count UpLaunch in my cost of acquisition because I use it for quite a few different things, right? And so for me, I want to take a look at how much did I spend over the entire month on shit that I use to acquire new customers, and that's it, right? Then I divide that by how many new customers, how many actual new clients I acquired, and that's my number. That's how much it is. Usually for me, it's around $150 to $250, depending on the month. Okay, is that good or is that bad? It's not either. It just is, right? And if it's good or bad, largely depends on how much you charge your clients, right? What if you charge $20,000 for everything that you sold? Well, 150 or 250, even the high end, $250 to make 20 G's is a good fucking deal, right? But if you're selling something for $250 and it costs you $250, that's not a very good deal, right? And so that brings me to our second number, right? The first one was cost of acquisition. The second number is lifetime value, right? And lifetime value is how much money am I going to get from this person before they stop doing business with me, right? And that's across all different businesses, not just gyms, but how much money is this person going to pay me before they're no longer going to give me any more money, right? And so that's what lifetime value is. And to find that number, right, it's a lot more simple than people think. You take your average membership, your average monthly membership amount, right? If it's $150 is what your average member pays, or $250 is what your average member pays, or $350, and then you divide that by your churn percentage, right? So I'll say that again, your average membership ticket size for a month, right? 1 month. If somebody does a paid in full, then just do the math and figure out what does it come out to per month, right? Take that number and divide it by your churn. Now, you do need to know those two numbers, churn, and so you'll need to know your churn percentage, which I'm going to add to the bottom of honorable mentions of numbers that you could know. Churn is important to know. And then the other one that I'm talking about that I'm referencing is average membership rate. So if you know those two numbers, then you can find your lifetime value pretty quickly. There's other ways to find it, guys, but they take a lot longer, like actually tracking how much members have paid you. That's probably can be a little bit more accurate, but can be really freaking hard to do. I've tried it, it's not easy, right? Because you have so many members that paid for like some stayed a long time, some stayed a little bit of time, you gotta find the average. The quick way to do it is average membership rate divided by churn for the month, right? So once you know your lifetime value, guys, now we know how much money we're making per customer, roughly, and that's revenue. We'll get the profit shortly, right? And so now we know how much it's costing us to acquire that member, and now we know how much they're probably going to give us before they're done doing business with us. Now we can start making some decisions, right? Mostly decisions at this point based around spending. How much can we spend? Right. The next number that I want to talk about is net profit percentage, right? And so this number is very important because this is actually what goes in your pocket. So those are my three big numbers that you got to know. Cost to acquire your new customers, your lifetime value. So how much is that customer going to give me before they are done doing business with us? And then finally, your net profit percentage. How much profit dollars do I put in my pocket at the end of every month, right? And so to find your net profit percentage, all you do is take that total amount of dollars. Let's say it is $2,000 that you put in your pocket, and you divide it by your total revenue for the month, right? So if you have $2,000 and you divide it by $20,000, that's all the money that you accounted for the month, then your net profit is 10%, right? And so we need to know that number. What's more important is really how much money you put in your pocket at the end of the day, more than like a percentage. We only use the percentage as a means to gauge the health of the business, right? And so if the industry average is 20% and you're at 10%, that you probably have about 10% more that you can grow before you start getting above average, right? So you probably know there's a gap that you can close, right? Just by fixing up a few things, efficiencies, people, processes, whatever it may be, right? If you know what your absolute return is, right? Meaning that you know that you're putting $5,000 in your pocket, but you don't know what what your net percentage is, then it's hard to make improvements. You're like, I don't know if it's good or bad. It's just, that's what I make. Well, you should know if it's good or bad, right? Is that going to change like how much money is going in your pocket? No, but it's good to know if your numbers are good or bad, right? And so those are the three main numbers that I would know. And throughout this program, we talk a lot about how you can influence those numbers, right? How to influence cost of acquisition by blending in organic sources, how to influence lifetime value by charging more and selling longer term packages. Imagine if you just charged, 25% more and had people stay for 25% longer. What would that do to your lifetime value? It would go way up, right? Or your net profit percentage, right? What if you were able to increase your net profit percentage by only 10%? What would that look like for your business? Well, it's double the amount of money going in your pocket every month, right? And we talk a lot about how we influence these numbers as you get through the program, right? Because at the end of the day, that's what we're looking to do. So here are some honorable mentions for numbers. They're important to know, but I think you can still be successful if you don't know these numbers, but they're still really important to know. And if you can know them, you should, right? And again, all this stuff is being tracked. Once you get to phase 3, lesson 2, where we talk about systems, I have systems built in for you, already done. Just click and download that will track all of this stuff for you, right? So here are some of the honorable mentions. Gross profit, right? Gross profit is how much you spend on direct labor, right? And so let's say somebody gives you $300 for their membership per month, right? How much money do you have to spend to fulfill on what you just sold as far as labor goes, paying your coaches, right? Because that's the number that's the biggest variable. your expenses, right? So if you have gross profit, then you subtract your expenses and now you have net profit, right? Well, a lot of the times your expenses are not super variable. Like your rent is going to be the same, whatever you agreed upon. Your, credit card processing, your software that you're using, everything, guys, all the utilities, all those expenses, maybe you can move around a little bit, but not a ton. The big expense that separates gyms making 10%, profit, take home, margins, and 30% take home margins is how much they pay in payroll, right? How much they're giving to their coaches, right? That's the biggest influencer. And so what I teach in the course is that, guys, it can't be over 40%, right? If your gross profit is not, 60% or higher, it's going to be really hard to hit like good numbers where you feel comfortable with how much money you're taking home, right? And because, let's just do some basic math, guys. Let's say, you spend 40% on direct labor, on paying your coaches, right? So as an example, if you have $40,000 in revenue, 40% of that 50% would be $20,000. So 40% would be around 15,000, right? Somewhere around there, in payroll, 15,000. Well, let's say you have another $15,000 in expenses that you can't really influence or change. That's like your rent and everything else, right? You're left with, $10,000 left over. That's pretty great. That's pretty good. You put $10,000 in your pocket. That's a 20% net margin. That's what we're looking to do, for $40,000 of revenue. But what if you're paying your coaches 60%? Right? And now we have that same $40,000 coming into the business, right? But instead of payroll being 15 grand, it's now 25 grand, right? Because we're paying more. We're paying actually be 2750, right? Then you add the $10,000, or I'm sorry, the $15,000 of expenses that you can't really change, right? To your $25,000. And now what are we at? Now we're at 40. We brought in 40 and we spent 40, 60 on, 60% on the coaches and 40% on the same 40% on the expenses in either scenario, right? But now there's no money left over. So now we're running a nonprofit, but with all the liability of a business. That is awesome. We don't want to do that, right? And so we need to know what our gross margins are. If you know your gross margins, then you know roughly what your net margins are going to be, sort of, right? And so that's an honorable mention. The next one is profit per customer, both on a monthly basis and on a per unit basis. Okay, so as an example, I'll give you some quick math. And I told you guys this one is going to be about numbers. We don't normally do a lot of this math and numbers, but I think it's important. So let's say you charge your average, you find out that your average lifetime value of a customer, like let's just use the first example we did in this call, $1,500, right? Let's just say you charge $150 a month and your average client stays for 10 months. So it's at $1,500 is your total, lifetime value from that client. Well, what if you only have 10% net margins, right? Because we did the math. How much are you actually putting in your pockets from that client? $150. That's the answer. So by the time that client is done doing business with you, they have created $150 of profit for you as the business owner. Okay. But what if it costs you more than $150 to acquire that customer? Did you make a good deal? Probably not. Right now, at the end of the day, like it's maybe you're the coach, so you can afford to, you get paid out for actually doing the fulfillment, so you can afford to like not have the best lifetime value or cost of acquisition. But what happens when you're looking to scale and you're trying to get yourself out of doing everything yourself, right? Can you afford those same exact numbers, but then to pay somebody else? Right? And if the answer is no, then you're running an unscalable business, right? And so we teach you how to scale it by moving the numbers around, right? Because you could be running an unscalable business. It works for you doing everything yourself, right? But as soon as you don't want to do everything yourself and you want to pay other people to start doing stuff, so you have your freedom back and your time back, Now all of a sudden those numbers don't make sense, right? So that's why it's important to know your profit per customer, because when it comes to delegating, there may not be enough money left over to pay someone else to do the job, right? And so that's why we want to make sure our profit per customer is a certain amount, right? We talk a lot about that in the program too. The next one that I want to talk about, and it won't be, I won't go into like super detail, but is the numbers in your customer acquisition pipeline. Okay, and so I'll keep it simple. What is your cost per lead? What percentage of your leads are actually scheduling a meeting with you, right? What percentage of those meetings actually show up, right? And what percentage of those people that show up actually close? They actually sign up for you, right? If you know those numbers, then you're able to fix bottlenecks in customer acquisition, right? If you're saying to yourself right now, hey, I'm not acquiring as many customers as I'd like to, but you don't know those numbers, it's really hard to diagnose what the issue is, right? Be like, you go into the doctor and be like, hey man, my body hurts. And he's like, where? And you're like, I'm not really sure. I mean, he can do a total scan, eventually figure it out, but it would make a lot more sense if you could be a little bit more detailed, right? Same thing with this pipeline for customer acquisition. Like, you have to know how much it's costing you to get leads, guys. You have to know how much, like what percentage of those leads are scheduling appointments, because you have to close them. You have to sell them something. So how many people are even saying, hey, I agree to have this meeting with you about your gym and what it costs, right? And then if they do agree to have that meeting, how many of them are actually coming to it? You know, and if they do show up, so they've gotten all the way through the pipeline and they show up and they're sitting down across from you, how many people are you getting to say yes? Right? And if you know those numbers, then we know if we need to improve them or not, right? Because when you're in a group like this, we can tell you if these numbers are averages, industry averages, or if you're like way off. Now there's going to be a bell curve with everything and outliers on both ends of it, but we want to make sure that you are in the sweet spot for what the numbers should be. And this allows us to make improvements. But once we know where you're lacking, we can give you the best practices to make those improvements, right? Because we've been around the block, right? And so if we're like, oh, this number's low, do this. Hey, this number's low, yeah, you should probably do this, right? And that's how you fast track this stuff. Okay. Two more numbers: churn percentage. That's how many people out of your membership base currently is quitting every month. So if you have 100 members and 10 people quit every month, that's a 10% churn, right? That's high. You should be around 5%, meaning if you have 100 members, you should probably only have about 5 people quitting, right, per month. That's more indicative of a high ticket coaching program. You know, 10% is much more of like a come use our stuff, whether it's come use our classes, come use our open gym membership, but there's no coaching involved, right? There's no like, this is my coach, this is our plan, this is what we're going to do, this is when we track results. There's none of that happening. It's literally just come in, great job, see you later, right? That's going to be about more 10%. That's kind of like a turn and burn type company, man. It's high churn, it's stressful, it's not the best way to run a gym, right? Could you be successful with it? Sure, right? It's just way freaking harder. And then the final one is your average membership value, or your average membership. What is your average membership per month, right? It's good to know that number, because from knowing that number, you know how many units you need to have, how many customers you need to have to hit your freedom number, your profit numbers, your coaches numbers, right? How many coaches do you need? All of that stuff. And that's going to be based on your average membership, right? And that'll allow you to say like, hey man, I can probably pay my coaches about this amount to fulfill on this membership because I know this much will be left over, right? If you don't know what your average membership is, it's going to be hard to, pay them. You might get it right. It's not that you're going to get it wrong, but you're kind of like shooting in the dark. You know what I mean? And so if you don't know, if you're watching this video now and you don't know how to find any of these numbers, guys, our coaches definitely do, right? So feel free to reach out to Jeff or Chase, or reach out to myself, and we'll help you get squared away with these numbers. If you haven't quite made it to phase 3 yet, I cover all of this stuff in phase 3 under systems. I know it's a little bit more boring than like sales and generating leads and some of the fun stuff, fulfillment, but these are the things that give you a lot of confidence when it comes to delegating and scaling your business. Because I can tell you this, If I didn't know these numbers, I would have been super apprehensive to like scale and delegate important business decisions to my team, right? But I can peek in under the hood. When you use the operating systems that are given to you guys in phase 3, and you're having your team fill those out, they're telling you what these numbers are, right? They're filling them out, and then now you know these numbers within like 5 minutes. You can open it up, and in real time, you can see all these numbers, and you're like, okay, everything's going good, right? Because it's worrisome to like delegate your business to somebody that's not you, right? And so knowing these numbers makes it a lot less stressful, because then it's objective. When you ask your team, hey, how's the business going, right? You want it to be an objective answer. These are our cost of acquisition. This is our price. This is how many customers. You don't want their subjective, response, which is like, I think it's going really well. Our members are really happy. The staff is doing great. The workouts are tough, right? Those are great answers, but that's how they feel the business is going. We want to know objectively how the business is actually doing health-wise based on the numbers, right? And these are the numbers. The numbers that we covered today are the numbers that you should have your team be reporting to you, or at least when they fill some stuff out, you're able to calculate these numbers really quick. So you're like, oh, okay, it is doing really well. Or you're like, hey, these guys think it's going really well, but there's no profit left over. So let's train them, right? So anyways, guys, I hope you enjoyed that. It could be a little bit dry if you're not a numbers person. I like numbers, so I try to make it fun. But with that being said, feel free to, if you have any questions, like on all these group coaching calls, you can unmute yourself. You can drop it in the chat if you're watching this from Facebook, and I'll answer them. But we'll leave the last 5 to 10 minutes open for questions. If nobody has any questions, then I will let you guys get back to work, because I know that you probably have a lot of stuff to do. You own gyms, right? So there's always something to do. But hopefully you guys enjoyed it, and feel free to ask any questions. Going once, going twice. All right, guys, we're out of here. Thank you for jumping on today's call. I will be back on tomorrow at noon Central with new subject matter that we'll be talking about, but it will have to do with growing your gym, right? And hopefully if you just grab a couple nuggets from these things every time you jump on, you'll have some cool aha moments and be able to drive your business forward. So appreciate you guys taking the time, and I will see you tomorrow. We're out of here.